Jumping over to Vol, realize Vol hasn't really been spiking on this rally. So normally when you get a violent breakout, realize Vol's actually spiking with the market, but we're not really seeing that. It's been a bit more of a grind. You can see here on the OHLC charts, we're grinding. We're not really breaching on Bitcoin. We're not breaching implied ranges. But if you look at ETH, similar, but we did have a breach yesterday where we did pretty much double the implied move on that aggressive break of 2250. Looking at carry and implieds were lower in Bitcoin. They were a little bit higher in ETH. You can see that here in the vol changes, about 3 vols lower in Bitcoin in the front and about 4 vols higher in Ethereum. Carry is back to positive, looking between sort of 5 and 10 vols on Bitcoin, kind of 15-ish vols on ETH. The breakout, like I said, I feel like the breakout looks to be on here, and crypto, by losing its risk asset correlation, that means something else is driving the breakout. And that is the more bullish thing, right? If it was just correlated to stocks, then I wouldn't necessarily be that bullish. But the fact that it's rallying even when stocks aren't, that tells me there's something else driving this, whether it's the capital flight story or whatever it is. I think that makes me more bullish. And also the breakdown in correlation may even drive macro traders, portfolio manager types, TradFi types, to rotate away from equities and into crypto. Because right now they're sitting on equities that look expensive. And if this war lingers on, equities might have a 5 to 10% sell-off coming. Whereas crypto is actually showing that it's rallying in the face of this war. So maybe people dial down some of their equity exposure and put a little sliver of that into crypto as a way to diversify and rotate, because if the correlation is dropping, then why not? There might be some of that going on as well. And we are starting to see ETF inflows as well. So that does kind of back up that story. So here are what the curves look like, shifting lower in Bitcoin, but still in mild inversion there if we ignore the front week. And then ETH, similar sort of story there, bit higher vols though in general, and actually the curve was small contango last week has flipped back into inversion. These are the time series, usual story where we get a little spike in the front end and it drifts back down, but it is still holding inversion in both, as you can see there. Skew wise, it is moving up a little bit back away from puts, but nothing too dramatic, right? Like, given the rally that we've seen and the fact that we're potentially breaking key resistances, historically, you probably would have seen more of a call bid, but we're not really seeing a massive call bid. So people still thinking it's worth having some put protection given the broader landscape. And, whilst they might be speculating with super short dated upside or buying a bit of delta here to play a break, there still seems to be enough demand on the put side there overall, and that maybe that's a structural thing now that isn't going to go away for a while. Spot vol correlation here chart, I like this chart. I've added it recently. These blue dots are the most recent observations. So look, as we're moving up towards 75k, vol's just kind of floating, right? Vol's not. I had one of my podcasts, Crypto Options Unplugged. I was interviewing one of the co-founders of STS Digital last week. We were discussing this very idea that if we do break to the upside, does the vol float or does it actually follow, the past correlation where vol trades lower on the rally? And I think the conclusion I kind of came to was, if it is a violent break where we get some decent realized on the way up, it probably does float. But then once it settles down, the overwriting flow will come in and then whack it back down. So there'll be like a lag. I don't think it'll just kind of trade straight down like that on the rally. I think we're kind of going to rip to 80k. The vol will kind of float around to where it is. And then once we settle for a day or two, it'll get smashed, right? That's probably what's going to happen. That would be my guess anyway. Skew wise, I'm going to say I don't think, depends how it happens, right? If we gap up to 80k and stabilize, then I think skew's going to kind of hang in around these sort of levels. I don't think it's going to depart too far from here. If we smash to 85k quickly and the market starts to think, oh my God, we could go to 100k, then you might start to see some real cool skew come back, right? I don't think the move from 75 to this area is going to be enough to take us back to cool skew. That's my feel. The market will either prove or disprove me, but that's kind of my sense there, okay? Positioning wise, like I said, we are going to run into longer gamma here. Currently, we're looking at about 40-50 million. We should be double that if we do get up there towards 85-90k. ETH has got short gamma. It's too small to matter, I think. Like you've seen the break, right? I mean, well, when I say that, in theory, short gamma should actually exacerbate the move higher, and we have been seeing quite a spicy move higher. So maybe it is impacting, right? But those numbers just don't feel big enough to me to be impactful. But again, I could be wrong on that one. But I think just in general, a move up another 10% to 2600 is consistent with what the chart is looking like. And there's nothing on the gamma landscape that should really get in the way of that. Here's the skews. As I kind of alluded to, we are moving away from put skew a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. Long end skew very much exactly where it was, not really moving. So that tells you structurally those longer dated put skews are going to probably remain. And like I said, I think we've got some work to do before this front end actually flips into calls. I think we're not going to see that immediately. And then looking at the relative value side of things, I had been saying it, right? Even at about 18 to 20 vols, ETH Gamma looked better value to me than Bitcoin, especially if we did get a break higher. We got our break higher. The ETH Bitcoin spread jumped about 6% to 0.031. It was oscillating around 0.029 for ages. The big resistance does come in at about 0.032 now. That's the next level it needs to break, which is a few percent higher. If it breaks that, then I think you'll see ETH vol probably trade up to 30 vols over Bitcoin because it'll probably be quite a swift move. The vol spread did pop already by about 4 to 5 points this week. As you can see, that shift higher, particularly in the front. But that coil, right, that coiling price action in ETH BTC was just, it was potential energy that was building, and it couldn't last forever. And at some point it was going to break. And, you know, so I was hoping it was going to break to the upside, and it turned out to be that way. So that was nice to see. All right, that is my summary on crypto. Pretty bullish message at the end of the day. Looks like the break is on. I'm speculating a little bit, buying a few cheeky calls in the front end just to see if we can jump on that momentum and if the break really does happen. I'm not getting too excited. I'm not like spending loads and loads of premium on it, but I felt like, you know, we do tend to respect technicals, and if we are going to break a level, then chances are it'll probably catch a bit of a move. So that's what I'm gunning for right now. All right, guys. I'll catch you back here next week. Cheers.
If you want to learn to trade options like a pro, then look no further.